In a realm where one's destiny is determined at birth, he was cursed with the worst possible stats. No mana, no innate talent, just endless dungeon runs to cover his sister's medical bills. Driven by despair, he ventured into a forbidden dungeon, where something shattered the established rules. In that moment, he acquired an eye that revealed truths no one else could see. Hidden stats, concealed potential, secrets kept from the entire world. This marked the beginning of his journey into what would be known as the Born Lot tier, and his new ability known as Admin Vision. The story opens with the young protagonist sprinting through a dark cave, his breath ragged from exhaustion. He reaches a dead end, and the monsters pursuing him quickly close in. Desperately, he begs the goblins to stay away, realizing he has no escape. Raising his voice, he calls for aid, fearing his end is near. Just as the monsters draw closer, a group of strangers arrive, swiftly defeating the monsters and telling him to stop being a burden. They dismiss his pleas as pathetic, and his conscience begins to torment him. His magic level is a mere 5, far below the threshold even for rank E, rendering him unranked and insignificant. He remains silent, pouring tea into a cup, and quietly expresses gratitude for their help. He offers them the tea, hoping they might want to drink, though his tone is filled more with politeness than hope. A man named Sato then uses magic to snatch the cup from his hand, mockingly telling him he's clever in his own pitiful way. He ridicules him, calling him a trivial speck, only fit to entertain others or scrape by in life. 20 years earlier, the world changed dramatically when mysterious cubes began descending from the sky, known as the Cubes of Divine Gift. Humanity received magic, awakening a new era of power. Yet, the gods' cruel design bestowed equal abilities upon everyone, creating a stark divide. Unranked individuals with minimal magic and high-ranked heroes with vast powers. The stronger ones could sell rare magic stones and amass wealth easily, while the weak struggled to survive. His own sister, also powerless, stands as a testament to this inequality, fueling his anger. But he was quickly snapped back to reality when one person struck him in the face, telling him not to look at him with ugly eyes. Before he could respond, they urged him to continue collecting the magic stones. The protagonist reflected on the mysterious cubes that appeared 2 decades ago, which harbored worlds teeming with monsters. These were called dungeons. The strength of the monsters within depended on the cube's rank, ranging from E to S. Despite their high potential, he was trapped in an E-rank cube, one of the weakest. When the cubes burst open, these dungeons became accessible, fundamentally shifting the world's landscape. The Dungeon Association, originally formed by guilds that explored and conquered these dungeons, began to influence society. It marked the dawn of adventurers wielding magic and technology powered by enchanted stones, a reality that felt closer to a game, with nullable NPC-like figures shaping history in this new, dangerous world. Sato handed him a stack of bills, explaining that it was his share. He expressed his gratitude, but as soon as he released his grip, the money slipped from his hands and fluttered to the ground. Without hesitation, he stomped on the bills, then remarked with a wry smile, "It's tough to control magic when there's a lot of it, isn't it?" Soon after, he and the other adventurers departed, leaving the protagonist to pick up the scattered currency. Later, at home, he reflected that even if a deity existed, not everyone was truly blessed by it. Upon entering the house, his sister Nagi greeted him warmly. He advised her to rest in bed, but she refused, insisting she was much better. She demanded to be tested, but her legs suddenly buckled, and he caught her just in time, asking, "Are you all right? You shouldn't push yourself so hard." She chuckled softly and thanked him. Noticing something on her shoulder, he wondered if her symptoms were the result of magical exhaustion, a condition inflicted by the very god he doubted. With the advent of the cubes, humanity awakened to magical power. Those endowed with abundant magic gained extraordinary abilities and superhuman physical traits. Conversely, individuals with minimal magical reserves lacked any special skills, with their magic often consumed even during simple movements. Those suffering from magical exhaustion experienced their magic, which should heal itself naturally, being siphoned off by parasitic magic stones embedded in their bodies. When their magic couldn't replenish, they eventually lost the ability to move even a finger. Until a cure was discovered, the only remedy was blood transfusions to restore their magic. Yet, due to the surging number of patients, these treatments became prohibitively expensive. A global race for donor blood had begun. Noticing a scratch on his arm, she called him over, pointing out the injury and insisting they treat it. He downplayed it, claiming it was minor and would heal on its own. But she, with a serious look, insisted on examining him herself. Nagi applied ointment to his cuts, remarking how covered in wounds he was. He joked that these were honorary medals for his bravery in facing challenges. They decided to cook a meal together. Today's dish was ransom fish. As they ate, she commented that it was delicious. He chuckled, telling her to enjoy it but to chew more thoroughly. She handed him a spoon, earnestly inviting him to eat well too. He was moved by her kindness, but suddenly her hand trembled, and she accidentally dropped her spoon. She apologized, but he simply ate the fallen food with a smile, finding it surprisingly tasty. Later, she went to bed, and he resolved to try harder. There was no other choice. Research on the disease was still ongoing. One day, they would fully understand how to treat it, but until then, only money could ease her suffering. For the sake of his late parents, he vowed to protect her at all costs. The following day, Sad announced that he had been fired. The protagonist was stunned and asked him to repeat what he'd just said. He smirked and asked if he had gone deaf. When denied, he inquired about the reason for his dismissal. Then, with a sarcastic tone, he wondered if this incident meant he had suddenly become less intelligent. A genius like him couldn't afford to operate at such a low level. It would be unwise to aim for greater heights while remaining a mere foot soldier in the team. His frustration was evident as he loudly requested patience, promising to do whatever it took to improve. He vowed to work twice as hard as before. However, with a knowing smirk, he conceded that this effort might be pointless. Instead of wasting time on a weakling like him, it was far more beneficial for future ventures to associate with someone stronger. He no longer felt the need to go into the cubes, considering it pointless. Instead, he was told to do trivial work which he found unacceptable. Gripping him by the shoulders, he declared loudly that such a dismissal couldn't be happening. He needed money for his sister. When pushed away, he retorted that he didn't care whether he perished in the dungeon or from hunger. If he understood everything, he was told to leave immediately. After some time, the protagonist approached other adventurers and apologized, asking if he could join them in exploring the dungeon. The adventurer in charge asked about his rank. He retrieved and read his card, handed it over, apologized, and suggested he look for someone else. Later, he visited the Adventurers Guild, seeking a team currently recruiting. The staff examined his documents, apologized, but explained that his low rank made it difficult to find a suitable team. Concerned, he promised to do anything necessary, even if it meant carrying others' gear. She bowed in sympathy, expressing regret. Returning home, he was greeted by Nagi, who hugged him and asked if his work had ended early that day. He feigned cheerfulness, agreeing happily and claiming that their efforts had quickly cleared the dungeon. But the next day, the adventurer dismissed him loudly, stating he was annoying and that they didn't need an unranked individual. The guild employee also expressed regret, saying there were no teams currently recruiting. Multiple people told him he should try something else, criticizing him for hiding behind others while they did all the work. They called him a parasite, an obstacle, useless, unwanted, and pathetic. When Kai got back home, Nagi noticed his depression and asked if he was looking for a new job. He nodded. She mentioned he worked late every night and suggested he take a day off to relax and maybe play some board games together. Frustrated, he yelled that she should just go to bed already. Who did she think he was working so hard for? If she was worried, she should leave him alone and rest. She apologized and reached out, but he started to walk away, telling her to rest and go to bed. Eventually, he returned to the office, where the employee again said there were no job openings today. He stepped outside, looking exhausted, contemplating how 3 weeks had flown by with no progress. Perhaps he should abandon his efforts and seek a regular job. Yet, the meager salary couldn't support Nagi's treatment, which was only possible through the money he earned from the cubes. Glancing sideways, he spotted a bakery and approached to buy 2 pies. Checking his wallet, he realized he had only enough for 1. Later, he returned home, called his sister, and told her he brought her favorite strawberry pie. When he entered her room, he noticed an eerie silence and found her lying unconscious on the floor, filling him with deep anxiety. Panicking, he called an ambulance and urgently described her condition. The emergency crew arrived swiftly, took her to the hospital, and doctors restrained the worried young man. After arriving at the hospital, he waited anxiously for the surgeon to complete the operation. Approaching the doctor, he asked in a trembling voice what was wrong with his sister. The doctor asked him to remain calm and explained that her condition had worsened. She was now in the 3rd stage of her illness, meaning she might never wake again. Shocked, he asked if anything could be done. The doctor replied that they could keep her alive until a cure was found, but blood transfusions were in short supply, making her treatment extremely costly. The price was roughly 10 million yen, and since no definitive cure existed yet, it was uncertain when or if she would recover. He entered her room, sat beside her, and felt consumed by guilt. He had already lost their parents and forced her through that ordeal, and now he was willing to risk losing his only sister. Meanwhile, the news broadcast announced an emergency alert. A golden cube had appeared on Shibuya Street. The Dungeon Council was assembling a team to conquer the cube, offering 5 million yen to each participant and another 5 million upon successful completion. The organization's president, Ryuenji Kagura, explained that a special team was being formed to clear the golden cube, with no specific demands, just the courage and willingness of brave individuals. His voice called out to all who heard, inviting them to join. The protagonist chuckled softly, feeling as if divine aid had suddenly arrived. The mysterious cube, unknown to all, seemed to place his survival odds at less than 50%. Even if he took the risk, there was no certainty he would return. Yet, with 5 million yen just for entering and a total of 10 million for success, he decided to muster his resolve. Rising from his chair, he thought that no matter what bizarre challenges awaited him, he would fight for that money. Most importantly, he would survive to tell Nagi when she woke up, doing everything in his power to save her and bring her back. 72 individuals, each driven by their own ambitions, be it wealth, honor, or the desire to make a name in the scientific world, found themselves drawn together by the sudden appearance of a shimmering golden cube. Despite their differences, they shared a common resolve: to eradicate this mysterious object from existence. From this moment, only 2 names would be remembered, defined by those who survived the ordeal. One day, an arrival at the guild's headquarters was announced. The girls at the desk confirmed that registration for the vanguard tasked with confronting the golden cube was underway. They also distributed supplies, informing the candidates that they should request assistance if needed. News anchors speculated about the event, urging viewers to follow updates. The sheer number of young explorers eager to enter the cube was staggering. Sato, noticing a rival, cast a knowing smirk and remarked that it was time to see who had arrived. Approaching him, Sato greeted a familiar figure, commenting on how long it had been since they last met. He inquired about his condition and whether he had already found a new benefactor. Despite their casual exchange, they were fully aware of the pressing mission: to clear the newly appeared golden cube. Their focus was unwavering. With that, they parted ways. Kai, showing a grave expression, declared his intention to enter the cube, clearly upset by the prospect. As he moved forward, Sato suddenly punched him in the stomach, causing him to collapse. Sato sneered, accusing him of being a leech seeking easy riches and suggesting that such a parasite deserved death. Just as Sato prepared to cast a magic spell, a loud voice interrupted him, cautioning against illegal offensive magic. The experienced team member quickly clarified her authority, prompting the group to step back. Sato, still bitter, muttered a derogatory farewell, wishing him ill luck as cannon fodder. The girl then extended her hand, asking if he was unharmed. He grasped it, expressing gratitude. She inquired whether he was heading into the cube too, to which he nodded and asked about her plans. She declined, explaining she lacked the strength to fight. A man approached them, addressing her as Ya, and announced his arrival. As she prepared to bid farewell, he observed her carefully, pondering her inability to fight. Was she also unranked? It seemed odd. A strange, unranked individual heading into the most perilous dungeon. It sounded like a bad joke, yet he recognized her obvious motivation. Meanwhile, a speaker on a nearby podium addressed a gathered group of adventurers. He introduced himself as Tanaka Ai, vice captain of the Avalon Guild, Japan's top organization. With a loud voice, he thanked everyone for voluntarily choosing to face the unknown cube, risking their lives. A curious adventurer questioned aloud whether the vice captain's backers, two individuals standing behind him, were truly from America, suggesting that their presence was unexpected. The man shrugged, noting that despite the hasty gathering, they all shared a goal: to conquer the cube. Cooperation and coordination were essential. They had to fight as a team and return alive. At that moment, two figures seated nearby discussed the situation. One asked if their presence was truly necessary, hinting at underlying doubts about the readiness of the team. The main objective wasn't to simply clear the cube. That was not their concern at the moment. Everything unfolded precisely as he dictated, and if the believer who sent them could handle it, then so much the better. Yet, this golden cube unsettled him deeply. The others now called it an unusual box, or perhaps a treasure chest. Its significance felt much deeper. All members of the vanguard had entered the room, and he asked aloud, "Is this the golden cube?" The adventurers began inspecting their surroundings, queries echoing. "Are they already inside?" None of them had seen such locations within cubes before. A glanced around but saw no obvious entrance or exit, prompting him to loudly declare that some mechanism must be hidden here. They had to meticulously examine everything present. Approaching one wall, they noticed a fresco. Someone asked, "Is this a mural? Perhaps it hides a code or mechanism." The main character scrutinized it and deduced that the first fresco depicted monsters fighting humans. The second portrayed a knight alongside an angel, symbolizing allegiance and dedication. The third was ruined, obliterated beyond recognition. Above it, he observed an angel and a cube, and nearby, an eye. He recalled seeing such an eye before. Ace stepped closer and asked, "Is this the Eye of Providence, the all-seeing eye?" He wondered about the purpose of these frescoes and their placement. He suspected they served as clues, hints embedded within the artwork. Suddenly, an unknown voice announced that the first trial had commenced, a trial of strength. A deafening sound caused everyone to feel a wave of nausea, and a countdown began. He quickly urged calm, insisting they split into pairs and find steady positions. The adventurers moved, backs pressed against each other, waiting for the timer to run out. A girl asked cautiously, "What is this?" He admitted he didn't know but advised readiness for what was to come. Kai stood tense, perplexed by the meaning of it all. The voice reiterated, "This is the start of the trial of strength." He found himself alone in the room and exploded with frustration. "This has to be a joke," he thought bitterly. "Why am I here alone?" He reasoned that teleportation had not occurred before clearing the dungeon, making this an unusual place. Suddenly, a small cube materialized beside him, from which a strange creature crawled out. He immediately identified it as a hobgoblin, an E-rank boss in typical cubes. At E-rank, raiders could mostly handle such foes, but he wasn't at that level. Fear gripped him as he realized that this hobgoblin could easily overpower him. It was his opponent, and he knew another might have defeated it easily, but he had no choice but to stand his ground. Giving up was not an option. His thoughts were set on saving Nagi, no matter what. The monster emitted an ominous cry and lunged. He dodged instinctively, heart pounding, recognizing that a single blow could annihilate him. He turned sharply to counterattack, striking the creature in the stomach, observing how its trajectory was predictable. Calmly, He reminded himself to stay mobile, as the monster's attacks followed a recognizable pattern. His previous taunting had been a lesson. It gave him strength. With renewed resolve, he prepared for the fight, knowing victory was his only path forward. He had to carefully approach the hobgoblin and strike decisively. Just as he readied his attack, the creature let out a thunderous roar, causing him to falter. The hobgoblin suddenly turned sharply in his direction and delivered a powerful blow to his stomach. The force of the strike sent him sprawling to the side, leaving him badly hurt. His intimidation ability had taken effect, and he struggled to regain his footing. Clinging to his sword, he looked up with a stunned expression, realizing this situation was dire. He could hardly breathe and knew he had to get up immediately. As he lifted his head, he saw the monster rushing toward him, bellowing loudly. He raised his sword in a desperate attempt to block the attack, but it slipped from his grasp and clattered away. Panic gripped him. He fell to the ground, horror overwhelming him as he stared at the hobgoblin advancing. Fear threatened to paralyze him, and he felt hopeless, convinced he was destined to die. The monster approached calmly, about to bite his head off, and in that moment, he thought of himself as worthless. An insignificant, rankless nobody, a disgrace. He begged his sister for forgiveness, certain he wouldn't be able to fulfill his promise. Remembering Nagi gathering his strength, he summoned the last of his resolve and struck the creature with a powerful blow to its mouth. A surge of determination coursed through him, and he resolved not to surrender. The hobgoblin howled in agony and collapsed to the ground. He pushed himself to his feet and shouted, "How does that taste? Is it good?" Preparing for another move. He then took out a small vial and asked loudly, "Was that enough? Or do you want more?" He threw a dungeon artifact, black paint, that struck the monster's head, hitting it directly in the eye. Without hesitation, he turned and ran, grabbing another artifact and hurling it at the creature, pinning him firmly to the ground. While the hobgoblin struggled to move, he seized his sword and rushed forward, striking a devastating blow. The monster was defeated. An unknown voice then announced that the first challenge, the test of strength, had been passed. Immediately afterward, he collapsed onto the ground, coughing up blood. In his pain and exhaustion, he believed he had succeeded but had pushed himself too far. Darkness clouded his sight, and he struggled to hear what was around him. Suddenly, he was teleported back into the room, where E lifted his head and urgently told him to hold on. The vice captain was nearby, expressing relief that he was safe. It was all over. Midori was called upon to heal his wounds, and he realized the ordeal was finally finished. Her magic worked swiftly, and he stood beside her, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. He had passed the first test. He asked for forgiveness, curious about his rank and opponent. He explained he was unranked and had fought a hobgoblin. Looking at the vice captain, he wondered how such a man, covered in wounds, could have sustained injuries fighting a hobgoblin. He apologized, beckoned him to approach, and inquired about his opponent's identity. Turning to him, he explained that he had defeated a high-ranking ogre. The statement stunned everyone, as they believed the creature to be a formidable, high-tier monster, something even A-rank fighters struggled against. Such an achievement seemed impossible. He then announced that he had fought against everyone present in the arena. A nodded in agreement, adding that each competitor had faced their most powerful adversaries, as if each battle was a test of their true strength. Some challengers had been unable to return, leaving only hope alive for survivors. At that moment, an unfamiliar voice broke the silence, revealing that only 15 fighters had survived. The test of strength was over, and everyone was taken aback by this news. They recalled those who had failed to complete the challenge. The voice continued, announcing that the second phase, the test of audition, was beginning. The group remained gathered in the same room as it started transforming before their eyes. Around them, images of a palm, legs, an eye, and a torso appeared on the floor, projected as vivid paintings. The adventurers murmured, speculating that these were some sort of riddles or symbolic images, perhaps a quiz of sorts. Their attention was drawn to a luminous glow radiating from the frescoes on the wall. As they gazed in astonishment, they saw that the angel depicted in the artwork had suddenly moved. Approaching Kai, pushed him aside and insulted him, calling him trash, insisting he make way. Smiling confidently, conjured magic in his hand and declared that the first strike would decide everything. The angel, he said, must be destroyed. He launched an attack with magic, but surprisingly, the blast left the statue completely unscathed. The adventurers grew increasingly anxious, and he loudly ordered everyone to regroup and prepare for defense. The protagonist watched all this, pondering how their magic was ineffective against the angel, and how the room's mysterious frescoes seemed intertwined with their test. How could they pass the audition under these circumstances? Suddenly, he dropped his sword, feeling that his hands weren't obeying him, or perhaps that they weren't moving at all. Looking around, he saw that the others were also unable to move their hands. The angel advanced toward one of the adventurers, pressed his sword against his throat, and in horror, they watched as the angel swiftly beheaded him with a single strike. Panic erupted among the group, and he shouted for calm, instructing everyone to flee from the angel. They scattered unpredictably, only for the protagonist to collapse to the ground with a surprised expression. He turned around, bewildered, wondering, what is happening? His legs refused to move, yet he instinctively felt his arms. How could that be? The other adventurers clutched their heads, frantic, asking aloud, "What's going on?" He reflected with a puzzled look that he was lying on the ground but still able to move his arms. Lying nearby, urgently urged them to run, warning that the angel was approaching and they needed to keep their distance. Several of them voiced their concern about their vision, how they couldn't see clearly. He glanced toward where they stood, confused, unsure of what was happening to them all. A plate bearing an eye was placed nearby, alongside another with legs. Earlier, there had been one featuring arms. The adventurers tried to piece together their meaning, while loudly declared that the functionality of limbs depended entirely on the plate they belonged to. Tension ran high among the group, as they struggled to see anything, and the angel ruthlessly eliminated them one after another. Sato suddenly burst out of the plate with eyes wide open, then staggered and began to choke. Kai noticed this and wondered whether Sato had ended up on a plate containing only his torso, questioning if his vital organs had truly ceased functioning. He reached out, trembling with fear, and called him for help. Sato looked at him with surprise, puzzled by his frantic plea, and wondered why Kai even wanted to save him, considering how he had been treated like a mere dog, bullied repeatedly. Still, Kai believed that his survival was essential to save his sister, and secretly wished for forgiveness, as he felt remorse for his past behavior. Crawling towards Sato, he convinced himself that acting foolishly wouldn't allow him to face Nagi. Instead, he needed to become a dependable older brother. Gaining strength, Kai managed to stand up and immediately rushed to Sato's side. Without warning, Sato, with a mischievous grin, used magic to push him aside unexpectedly. Kai looked at him with a smirk, thinking that Sato might indeed survive. Meanwhile, the protagonist collapsed next to the monster and wondered if Sato had been pushed in the direction of the angel. His vision blurred, and everything seemed shrouded in darkness. Now he was lying on a slab marked with an eye, aware that the angel was somewhere nearby. He felt a sword pressed against his shoulder and feared that they were about to execute him. Panic surged as he realized he needed to escape this deadly trial. He cast magic at the angel, loudly demanding that the monster look at him. He was startled when he recognized A's voice. Initially, the angel was distracted but quickly turned back. This worried him further, and he shouted his name, urging him to run away. He felt the sword again, pressed against his shoulder, and wondered if the angel's gesture of placing the blade there held any meaning. He had to think quickly. This was a test of strength, a battle against monsters, with an angel overseeing a trial of skill. If the murals were clues, then something was amiss. The murals depicted a knight bowing to an angel in an oath of loyalty, symbolizing a test of both power and allegiance. Unexpectedly, The protagonist knelt before the angel, who still held his sword across his shoulder. Surprised, the angel withdrew slightly, and everyone observed in stunned silence. The protagonist loudly declared that they must adopt a stance of loyalty, as that was the key to passing the test. The murals pointed to two challenges: a test of strength and a test of loyalty. Though it sounded strange, this approach worked. The knight, bowing before the angel as if swearing allegiance, proved to be the right move. Maintaining this position outside the eye's perimeter proved extremely challenging. Careful movements were necessary, requiring them to crawl cautiously over the torso slab, as breathing became nearly impossible. Their first move was to reach the palm slab. Sod was lying on the seal, his legs lifted, when an angel appeared, guiding his sword towards Sod's shoulders. The sight filled Sod with terror, causing him to turn and scream loudly before retaliating with magic. A dense cloud of dust erupted from the clash. The angel pressed his sword to Sod's shoulder, which intensified Sod's fear, and he cried out that he did not want to die. Why him? The angel should choose someone else or help him. Useless wretches, they couldn't save anyone. Despite Sod's pleas, the angel delivered a fatal blow. Kai, witnessing this, clenched his teeth, resigned to the fact that he could not save Sod. Nearby sounds reached him. It seemed the angel had passed multiple times already. This suggested others were present too, and he badly hoped they would all survive. Suddenly, their vision was restored, and a voice announced that only 6 survivors remained. The second test, known as the test of audition, was now complete. All eyes turned toward the vanishing angel, and a voice announced that the final trial would commence in 3 minutes. Military personnel approached him, their voices filled with praise, affirming his bravery and thanking him for saving them. Their words were in English, but he translated their gratitude, and he requested permission to express his own thanks as well. Thanks to his actions, they had survived this nightmare. Still, he lowered his head and quietly admitted he saw himself as incompetent. He was meant to lead this mission as a commander, yet he had lost many comrades along the way. He felt he had failed as a leader. Nearby, one of them loudly countered that it wasn't true, insisting that without his help, they might have all perished. He was glad to have him with them now and expressed deep gratitude. After a moment, a voice announced that 3 minutes had passed, marking the start of the final test, the test of the soul. They were instructed to split into 2 teams and enter the door ahead. The challenge awaited behind it. One soldier declared that the decision was now made, and he intended to go with his team. He was eager to speak with the protagonist but knew that language differences would prevent mutual understanding. A agreed but expressed a desire to learn his name before parting. The protagonist nodded in comprehension, stating his name. The soldier, looking thoughtful, said he thought he recognized him but realized it was a mistake. Then he asked about his rank. The protagonist looked away, a hint of confusion in his voice, and answered that he was unranked. The soldiers, surprised, questioned loudly how he could have achieved so much without a rank, implying he came chiefly for the reward, reckless and daring. Standing beside him, one added that his actions had still saved them. It was crucial to remember that power alone wasn't everything. The girl placed a hand on his shoulder and asked, "Don't you realize how dangerous this cube truly is? Why did you take such a risk?" He explained that his sister suffered from magical exhaustion syndrome, illuminating his motives behind his daring act. Yesterday, her condition deteriorated to the 3rd stage of her illness, and the treatment was highly costly. Everyone around showed sympathy, sharing that this disease was quite common in their homeland. He had risked his life entirely for his sister's sake, which struck him deeply. One of the soldiers glanced at a photo on his phone and remarked that he hadn't seen his family in a long time. They needed to clear the dungeon, promising a reward, so they could return home and spend time with loved ones. Surely that was their true wish. One of the soldiers approached the girl and expressed his desire to spend the upcoming weekend with her. She was a sweet girl, brought together by luck. Her name was Tendo Midori. Although they were only engaged for now, she intended to take his surname someday. Hearing this, he was moved to tears. Meanwhile, the soldiers informed Lewis that he had been rejected and should try again later, citing that now he had more motivation to survive. They agreed they would be invited to the wedding one day. Minutes seemed to pass during their intense conversation, yet for the first time in a long while, the protagonist managed a genuine, silent laugh. After parting ways, they stepped through two separate doors, exchanging farewell. He led the way, casting light with magic and cautioning them to stay alert. He sensed something ahead and called out. Approaching, they found a collar lying on the ground and questioned what it was. Unexpectedly, a luminous aura spread across the area, revealing a multitude of enormous monsters behind bars. They looked at each other, dazed, wondering how many creatures there were and whether eliminating all of them was even feasible. It seemed impossible, an unbearable task. Midori pointed toward a side door, calling A by name, urging them to rush toward it. Suddenly, a massive obstacle appeared in the corridor, blocking their path. A voice announced that they must choose a victim. The selected individual would wear the collar, opening a path for the rest. The group was stunned, realizing that one might die while the others survived. The voice warned they had just 1,000 seconds remaining. Frustrated and angry, shouted, "Is this a joke? What kind of monstrous test is this? How much longer can they torment us like this?" He fell to his knees, despair in his eyes. Kai examined the collar, knowing that someone's life was at stake, and felt certain death was imminent. Still, they had made a solemn oath to meet outside once everything was over. For him, it was too cruel to accept, too terrifying to endure. Clenching his teeth, he whispered that he did not want to die. Midori rose slowly, grasped a knife, and headed toward him. Her steps were hesitant, but he noticed her movements. He grabbed her wrists urgently, shouting, asking what she was trying to do. She responded nervously, loudly insisting that she had no choice, that it was the only way. He forcibly knocked the knife from her hand, and she looked at him with tears streaming down her face. He called her by her name, and she acknowledged that the situation was utterly terrible. Still, they had no choice but to select someone, and so she chose him. Even if he never forgave her or grew to hate her, her only desire was to stay alive with him. He begged for her forgiveness, explaining that he had forced her hand in the decision. He insisted he would remain, while she should leave with him. She refused, affirming that leaving without him was beyond her means. She couldn't abandon him no matter what. He embraced her tightly, asking her to understand his perspective. As the vice captain of the guild and her husband, he pleaded to be allowed to shield her from harm. She called out sharply, demanding to know why everything had come to this point. Memories flooded back of a past moment, when he and Nagi had been at his parents' funeral, raising questions of why they had left so suddenly. Holding her close, he contemplated the heartbreak of losing someone he loved, a pain he hated intensely. Neither of them wanted to face such grief again, yet they seemed to be caught in a cycle of loss and despair, just as he had been. Suddenly, both turned and saw him deliberately placing a collar on himself without permission. Approaching them with a grin, he offered an apology, explaining that he thought he might be a hero for a little while longer. He stepped forward, visibly worried, and sharply demanded what he was doing, insisting he remove the collar immediately. The protagonist assured her it was all right. After all, he was unnecessary here now. Still, he emphasized that the true reason was that his sister was waiting for him. He then posed a request, explaining that his sister's name was Nagi and that he had come searching for money to fund her treatment. Yet, this illness was incurable and funds would eventually run out. Ensnared in this dangerous situation, he pleaded him to watch over her, to which he responded with a quiet apology. Though it might have been an overly bold request, he asked him to use all his connections to help. He hesitated briefly, contemplating his words, and then gathered his courage to say that he understood everything. He assured that they would care for Nagi, even if it meant extending her life through every possible means. The man agreed and smiled kindly, acknowledging this request. Together, they moved down the corridor toward the door, while Midori loudly apologized for all the chaos. The vice captain stood still, silently thinking that this was for the best, believing Nagi would share the same view. A nobody of no rank had achieved so much. Perhaps it was better that way. He considered himself lucky. Meeting the vice captain of the guild was undeniably impressive. Promising to do everything in his power to heal his sister, he knew he might never be able to fully apologize, yet he would tell her everything that happened. His only hope was to see her again, his beloved sister. He wondered if there was heaven or hell, quietly wishing for a place in heaven. Sitting on the ground with his head bowed, he felt overwhelmed by the thought that he might die. Tears welled up, and he desperately wished to avoid death, reaching out to the others, pleading silently not to be abandoned. Fear gripped him. Someone needed to save him from this bleak fate. Suddenly, a key clattered onto the ground before him, while the other adventurers remained shackled, their faces filled with concern. A voice announced that the final challenge of the soul was about to begin. The main character was taken aback, convinced that it couldn't be true. Yet, the moment was upon him. This test had already started. The key possessed the power to unlock only 2 chains. He faced a critical choice. He had to decide wisely. Grasping the key, he felt it in his hand, aware that it could free just 2 people, either himself and another or both of them. Essentially, he now held their fate in his hands, free to act as he pleased. With each fleeting thought and shallow breath, a darkness deepened within him. It was unsettling. His instincts were overwhelming his rationality. He couldn't tell what voice was speaking from inside him, growing more insistent. A skeleton materialized beside him, urging him to choose salvation. It mockingly suggested he could simply use the key to escape alone. No one would ever know what he had done, no blame would be laid on him. Frustrated, he covered his ears and shouted that he wanted to save them both, indignantly ignoring the skeleton's words. The skeleton questioned his resolve, pointing out that if he truly cared, he would have freed them long ago. Without his help, they wouldn't have progressed this far. Now, they might have to be the ones to sacrifice themselves for him. He remembered E's promise. His sister belonged to him. The skeleton pressed him further, asking if he was serious, if he realized he might never see her again if he died. It all came down to money for his sister's treatment. That was the perfect solution, wasn't it? After all, he trusted they would keep their word. But he pondered whether strangers who had only known each other for a day truly deserved that kind of promise. No one would hear what transpired here, and few would want to live burdened by the guilt of a disabled person. He argued that they would do more for the world than a lowly nobody like himself. The skeleton, transforming into Sato, told him to stop humiliating himself. He had already become much stronger. His attempt to save him proved it. Few could rescue someone who had bullied him all his life. That was the point. That effort was his reward. He needed to be strong, to value his own life above all else. Wasn't that the true meaning of the soul's test? Life's worth, the strength of one's spirit. The main character hesitated, then nodded, convinced by the skeleton's words. He made a decision. With all his strength, he threw the key toward E and called out to him, asking if he would look after Nagi. He depended on him. The sadness that clouded his heart began to lift. A called him an idiot and asked what he was doing. He was just like always, willing to risk everything for others. He had been this way from the start, sacrificing his honor, pride, and very well-being. Even if he was weak, foolish, and useless, he would do whatever it took to protect those he cared about. He needed to cease playing the hero. It was driving him to the brink of madness. The main character turned with a faint smile, nodded in agreement, and asked, "He's pretty impressive, isn't he?" before vanishing completely. He had just insulted him when a voice announced that the time was up, signaling that monsters would soon be unleashed. Grabbing a knife, he shouted loudly, "How does that feel, God?" Likely craving to witness human agony. He sought forgiveness, yet it was futile. He would resist until the very end. Suddenly, an angel appeared behind him, announcing that she had finally found it, the purest soul worthy of the golden eyes. The protagonist looked around in astonishment. Where was he now? Darkness surrounded him completely. His last memory was hanging on the verge of death at the claws of monsters. Then, unexpectedly, an angel materialized. So, this must be heaven. At that moment, a system voice announced that he had successfully completed the soul's trial. Confused, the protagonist wondered about this trial of the soul. Was he still within the cube? The voice repeated the tournament standings. The survivors were Tanaka Ie and Tendo Midori, while the eliminated included Alfred Terrell, Lou Reilly, and Kyo Brutus. The main character gasped sharply. The eliminated, did they truly perish? Then the voice declared that Kai, who had cleared the cube, would be transported to the divine chamber. Moreover, he would receive the knight's orb and the eye of the god. Almost instantly, the protagonist sensed someone's presence. He drew his blade, readying himself for a possible attack. Suddenly, a blinding light flooded part of the room, and he saw a skeleton clothed in white robes sitting atop a throne. He exclaimed in surprise, "What is this?" Recognizing that the skeleton was not made of human remains, he noted it had wings and sat arrogantly on the throne. Behind it, on the wall, hieroglyphs appeared. He was startled. Although it was his first time seeing them, could he read what they said? Narrowing his eyes, he began deciphering the inscription. The first line read, "They have shamefully lost." He continued, "The defeat of the Light Ones is imminent. Even their bodies will be captured. The entire world faces the threat of enslavement. Soon everything will fall into their hands. Let them bear the burden." It read. The text mentioned the princess's forbidden magic, which sacrificed the holy knights. Then came a plea for forgiveness from future generations. He read 2 more lines. "May the power of the gods I be granted to the faithful and worthy, and may his radiant soul purge this wretched world of criminals." Surprised once again, Kai noticed a pyramid with an engraved eye and a choker. He wondered if touching them might be safe. Perhaps they were a mechanism to escape. Carefully examining the skeleton's relics, he hoped it wasn't a trap. Tentatively, he reached out and took the choker, reading the inscription. Lancelot. Without thinking, he instinctively looped the object around his neck and uttered, "That's the name of the knight from Arthurian legend." A sudden realization struck him. Why had he put it on? Could he be under some kind of influence? His hands moved of their own accord, sending a shiver down his spine. Out of nowhere, a knight clad in shining armor appeared before him, standing protectively in front. Suddenly, monsters materialized from the shadows, but the knight swiftly eliminated them with skillful precision. Confused, the protagonist wondered who they were. It became clear. He was witnessing the vision of the Knight of Light. Enemies reappeared, and Lancelot charged into battle, his movements fluid and purposeful. The clash of his sword echoed through the air, vibrating with force. In that moment, the protagonist noticed a princess crouching nearby, dodging enemy strikes. The knight asked her if she was unharmed. The protagonist's mind reeled. Were these memories his own, or were they someone else's? The princess began to apologize to Lancelot, acknowledging that he had become her knight, which meant he was bound to her fate. The knight retorted passionately, "Please, don't say that. I was a nobody and you saved me. My life is hers alone." Observing this unfolding scene, the protagonist realized that he was flooded with the memories of another. The brave knight, Lancelot, had repeatedly rescued a particular princess. In this chaotic replay of history, he couldn't look away. After some time, the princess handed the knight a glowing object and expressed her gratitude. The protagonist was stunned. He recognized it as a cube. Suddenly, Lancelot turned to him and said, "Finally, it's here." The moment had come when his honor, knowledge, and strength would be passed on to another knight. Presumably, on this night, he entrusted this world's destiny to him. Then, everything vanished, leaving the protagonist with wet cheeks. As he touched his face, he was baffled. Tears blurred his vision. Was this truly a memory? It felt as though someone had touched his very soul. The skeleton still sat motionless on the throne. Kai understood little of what he had witnessed, but one thing was certain. This might be the history of the universe itself. Picking up the cube, He sensed a hidden secret within its surfaces. Everything had been entrusted to him by the shining knight, and now this relic was his as well. A voice suddenly rang out, commanding him to activate the cube, announcing that the God's Eye skill was being transferred. A brilliant light emanated from the object, and the protagonist noticed his body moving involuntarily. The system prompted a countdown to activation, and then his consciousness faded into darkness. Suddenly, the skeleton's glow intensified, and in its place appeared an angel, the very one who had saved him earlier, assisting in the activation of the God's Eye. This divine gift transformed his perception, flooding his world with new colors. When he awoke, he found himself in a spacious chamber, bathed in bright sunlight. Confused, he surveyed his surroundings and wondered where he was, feeling an unexpected sense of awe. He wondered if he had truly returned home or if it had all been a dream. As he stepped through the door, a sudden prick in his eye made him blink. Then, everything blurred, and his eyelids grew heavy. Deciding to wash away the confusion, Kai headed for the shower. When he reached the mirror, he was stunned beyond words. A delicate choker rested around his neck. Surprised, he activated his status system and, bewildered, murmured, "His name is Kai, and his condition appears normal." Next, his mana level and various stats appeared before him. His mana was at 5, while attack, defense, agility, and intelligence each held a 25% conversion rate. His skill was displayed as level 1, the God's Eye, which shocked him. This couldn't be true. He wondered about his real stats. The system confirmed that the transfer of the God's Eye skill had been successful. Confusion washed over him, making him realize this was no longer a dream. A wave of joy replaced his initial shock. He exclaimed with happiness, "I did it! I finally have my first skill. It's not offensive, but if used wisely, it could be an incredible support skill. I won't let anyone down again." Calling out his sister's name, he told her that he had acquired a skill. As he gazed out the window, a sudden thought struck him. He'd completely forgotten something. Nagi's condition was worsening. Without hesitation, he sprinted into the street, running as fast as he could. Bystanders looked at him in surprise, but he paid no attention to their gazes. His mind raced. The golden cube, the trials, these were real. The money needed for his sister's treatment, which totaled 10 million yen, was finally within reach. He soon found himself at the hospital, where a doctor and nurse stared at him in disbelief. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he managed to greet them. "He did it. I have the money now. Let's start her treatment immediately." The doctor, stunned, tried to regain composure, but Kai pressed on. "We need to hurry. There's little time left. Hospitalize her as soon as possible, right now." His voice was urgent, almost shouting his name to be heard clearly. When he fell silent, the doctor asked, "Is his name Kai?" Dazed, he nodded. "Yes, that's me. But what's happening?" The doctor then put on the news, which announced new details about the Golden Cube. Last month, Tanaka Iei returned from the Golden Year. Only 2 survivors. It's a catastrophe. They were under pressure to bring the vice captain of the Avalon Guilds to justice. He stared at the screen, stunned. Last month, only 2 survivors? A realization dawned upon him. He told the doctor, "Please, don't let anyone know that I am Kai. Treat me as deceased." The doctor looked puzzled, scratching his head, while the nurse's expression was one of shock, as if she had seen a corpse suddenly spring to life. Sometime later, Kai and the doctor were riding together in a car, contemplating what lay ahead. The man informed him that Nagi had already been transferred to another hospital. Her current guardian was Tanaka Iei, the vice captain of the Avalon Guild. The protagonist listened in stunned silence as the doctor continued. Tanaka had returned from the cube and immediately petitioned for Nagi's transfer. At first, the protagonist was surprised. He hadn't known they were acquainted. A grim thought crossed his mind. He had sworn an oath, and now everything was changing. The doctor explained that he was Nagi's attending physician, so she remained under his care. Recently, he had been shuttling between his hospital and the new facility where Nagi was being treated. The specialized hospital was renowned for its groundbreaking treatment, considered the best in the country for this illness. When they arrived, the doctor led him to Nagi's room, where she lay under an oxygen mask with sensors and machines surrounding her. She was connected to artificial respiration, her face mostly covered by the mask. The sight overwhelmed him. He rested his forehead against the cool glass separating him from his sister, a surge of pain and compassion flooding his heart. Her tiny frame contrasted starkly with the large bed, and tears welled up as he silently thanked the heavens for her survival. Eventually, the doctor advised him to go see Tanaka and confirm that Kai was alive. Leaving the hospital, the protagonist made his way to the Avalon Guild, the largest and most influential in the country. Its vast size and imposing structure amazed him, much larger than he had seen on television. Inside, a friendly girl at the reception greeted him politely. "Welcome. How can I assist you?" she asked. He responded that he wanted to see Tanaka. She looked surprised at the mention of the vice captain. Distracted by the activity around him, he suddenly remembered his purpose and nodded. She requested his name and identification number while checking her system. After a brief moment, she confirmed that the information was correct and added that Tanaka would arrive soon. She directed him to sit and wait. Suddenly, Tanaka burst into the room, descending from the second floor like a hurricane, shouting his name loudly. Everyone stared in shock. The vice captain hurried over, fell to his knees before the protagonist, and kept repeating his name. Sheepishly, the protagonist reassured him, "Yes, I'm alive. I made it." At that moment, Tendo appeared, tears streaming down his face, and confirmed, "He's alive." Eventually, the emotional turmoil settled, and the group moved to Nagi's room. The boy told the protagonist, "I understand now," acknowledging that his final trial choice had been wrong. The protagonist nodded, accepting the truth, that even in the face of despair, life persisted and hope endured. He wanted to continue his story, but something suddenly caught in his throat, causing him to gasp in surprise. Tanaka, looking puzzled, asked if something was wrong. The protagonist recovered quickly, claiming everything was fine, though inside he wondered what had just happened. He longed to tell Tanaka about the divine chamber but found himself unable to. Was it because of the choker? As they approached the glass wall, Tanaka cast a gloomy glance at the girl and said something in vain. Nonetheless, Kai reassured him that Nagi's safety was in good hands. The protagonist hesitated, asking if he was truly certain. Tanaka replied confidently, emphasizing the importance of the promise he made, vowing he wouldn't break it. Observing this, the protagonist felt a mixture of relief and lingering concern but chose not to press. The vice captain then gently placed his hand on Kai's shoulder, reassuring him that Nagi was no longer a burden he bore alone. He reminded him that he could depend on his comrades. Gratitude filled the protagonist's heart. He bowed deeply and asked Tanaka to look after his sister. The latter nodded, saying, "Yes, leave her to us." Suddenly, his stomach let out a loud growl, and he clutched his belly. Tanaka asked whether they could grab some lunch together. The protagonist agreed, replying simply, "That would be nice." Later, as Kai walked down the street, looking at his checkbook, he considered inviting Tanaka for a meal, but it seemed he lacked the time. Meanwhile, reporters swarmed around him, eager to learn more about the Golden Cube, catching him off guard. Deciding to eat alone, the protagonist sought a quiet place. Tanaka offered to take care of Nagi's treatment, relieving him of worries. He then received his reward, a sum equivalent to 10 million currency units, and examined the receipts. Holding such a large amount for the first time made him feel as if his very being split in two. One part rejoiced, recognizing this rare opportunity for indulgence. Today he planned to spend freely. There wouldn't be another chance like this. The other part of him, guided by a sense of sanctity, objected. "This money is for Nagi. You shouldn't spend it thoughtlessly. A bird pecks grain piece by piece, yet the sack remains full." The first part bristled in reply, thinking, "Food is everything. You must nourish yourself properly before any long journey. It's the foundation of survival. The protagonist, feeling supported by his pragmatic side, agreed. He reasoned that spending the money on nourishing meals was wise. The holy aspect of himself was taken aback. The darker side, rejoicing in the possibility of luxury, remained indifferent. What was on the menu? Matsusaka beefsteak, foie gras, or caviar? When the order was placed, his meal arrived, a generous portion. The holy side commented, "A bowl of cold meats." The dark side was indignant, questioning if this was truly luxurious enough, as it was a meal he had every day. Kai noted that he usually ordered medium-sized portions, but today's serving was noticeably larger. He moved forward and topped his meal with an egg and some pickles. Both witnesses agreed without hesitation. They need to watch this kid. The protagonist nodded in thanks to the waiter and began to eat. From that moment, he gradually learned to utilize his golden eye. It allowed him to perceive various details about those nearby, such as mana levels, names, professions, and more. He could also spot beings awakened to higher states or equipment forged from magical stones, as well as monsters. However, the skill did not work on ordinary objects like canned food or herbs. For instance, at this moment, he was unable to see the stats of his bowl of food. His skill responded to reflections in mirrors but remained unaffected by televisions or photographs. When activated, it revealed the attributes of everything within his line of sight. The longer he stared, the more detailed the information became. An adventurer appeared before him, approached the counter, and ordered a meat bowl. He felt someone's gaze directed at him. Meanwhile, the protagonist analyzed the scene, thinking, "Wow! Look at this guy's sword stats." When the weapon was set down, its stats shifted. Mana registered at 4,000, attack at 600, defense at 500, dexterity at 500, and intelligence at 40. He pondered silently. It seems the sword stats change dramatically depending on who wields it. At that moment, Kai overheard a group of adventurers talking nearby. The first asked the second what he thought of the vice-captain of the Avalon Guild. The second replied, "Well, everyone knows the information about clearing the cube is classified, right? Only 2 survivors, and neither returned with magic stones or anything. And somehow, one of them is the guild's vice-captain." They couldn't explain why the golden cube had vanished. The protagonist was taken aback by these words and even rose from his seat. The golden cube had disappeared. The adventurers looked at him in confusion, their expressions questioning, "Who is that?" Later, the protagonist found himself at Shibuya Station, where a small spontaneous gathering had formed around the cube's remains. People laid flowers, drinks, and candles nearby. He thought with a sense of loss, "It's true, the golden cube is gone." Approaching the scene, he saw 2 women. The older woman was crying as she asked, "Why is this happening? I wish he could come back." It was obvious she referred to her lost loved one. The younger woman, with compassion in her eyes, gently patted her shoulder. Kai's mind raced, recalling all his allies and realizing, they all vanished without a trace. The only remnants are the god's eye and the choker. He wondered deeply, what was that? Why did this cube even appear? What was its purpose? Pausing near the dungeon entrance, he remembered the visions from the divine chamber. Something about cubes seemed crucial. Approaching the portal, he was stopped by a guard who declared that only authorized personnel could go beyond. Kai turned to look behind him, and what he saw filled him with surprise.